into another episode of the post-game press conference here. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and even the post-game media website, where you'll find every piece of sports content myself and my co-host do. I'm Ryan Pigeau, and I'm alongside John Lodge over there. This program is about breaking down the recent advancements in the sports world. We've got the NHL, the NBA, the major leagues, and a little bit of the NFL. We're always poised to deliver hot takes on all of it. And John, this time on the presser, we got a lot of NHL news in terms of the Game 6s all around. New York and Philly, Vancouver, Vegas, Dallas, Colorado. We got basically a Game 6 in every series but the Tampa Bay one. They beat the Bruins in 5 to go on to the conference final. So we'll drop some hot takes on that, maybe tee up the Game 6 and maybe the next round based on how we feel about those results. I don't know about you, but I want to talk about Chara and Boston's future there, just based on his comments exiting the season. And our beloved Maple Leafs are shopping our beloved goaltender. So I know you and I are going to have some extremely strong viewpoints on that. So that's, again, for the NHL news, we've already got tons, but we'll go right into the NBA. I want to start with today's show with this. It's the most recent news, the most pressing stuff, and the Raptors. They're down 0-2 to the Celtics. To me, you'll have to get me off the ledge here, but it's practically a death sentence because there's an 80% chance to win the series statistically when you're up 2-0. You had Marcus Smart going off in the fourth quarter yesterday from the three-point line. Him and Kemba Walker combined, they took over the lead, man. The Raps came out unreal. We'll have to dive into all of that, right? But essentially they're down 0-2. But on a positive note, the last time we talked, we're sitting here pumping the tires of the Denver Nuggets, and they fucking did it, dude. They pulled it off. They pulled off a 3-game comeback, and they're essentially in rare company. So we'll talk about that one too. And then tonight at 9 o'clock, another Game 7 in round 1 in the West, OKC and Houston. How do you feel about basketball? Before we jump into the rest of the show, how do you feel about that stuff going on? Exciting?
Oh man, I think I've learned so much more. You know me, I know as much about different sports as I can possibly take in, but I've watched so much basketball recently. I almost feel like I'm denying my heritage a little bit, not watching all the hockey I can take in. But man, the basketball is just so intense because the personalities that are involved in every single matchup.
Yeah.
Whereas with hockey, I understand it's a different game. It's a team sport, and one or two guys where they might be able to steal you a game, one game out of the series, you're going to need your whole team to win the series in a majority. Whereas in basketball, the personalities, they take over, they take command, and they're always front and center. Just take a look at the Denver and Utah series. Donovan Mitchell versus Jamal Murray, man. Mitchell putting up 57 one game, and then Murray putting up 50, breaking Canadian basketball or NBA playoff record with 50 points. Just insane. I love where we're at with basketball right now, and it's only like I kind of was a little disappointed. I was up earlier today and doing some research, and I was looking for a game to watch. I was like, oh yeah, we're so far in now. I got to wait till the evening to watch the games because they're only playing 2 a day. I'm so used to 4 games a day.
I do the same thing.
Oh my goodness. So yeah, loving basketball, but getting to the Raptors. And it's funny because you brought up one of the points that I was going to dive into. You brought up Denver, Utah. Okay, so the Raptors are down 0-2. Denver was down 3-1. What did they just do?
Exactly.
Are the Toronto Raptors a better team than the Denver Nuggets? I think they are. I really do. So do they have someone of the star caliber of Jamal Murray? No, they don't. Not at the development of Jamal Murray anyway, because we haven't seen that development from Pascal Siakam yet. But will it come? I believe it will come eventually. But like looking at the 0-2 deficit, man, I'm used to talking people off the ledge. I was at Sportsnet last year when
I've got you here.
When the Raptors were down 0-2 to the Milwaukee Bucks, and everyone was writing their ticket back home, saying that this was it. Milwaukee was going to go on, and they were going to win the NBA championship. And then, if you want some real truth, go talk to Giannis and ask him exactly how that turned out for him in the Bucks. Yeah, it didn't turn out very well. So being down 0-2, is it bad? Is it a tough situation for the Raptors? Of course it is. But you know what? This team, when their backs are up against the wall, they've pushed back more times than not. And I believe they'll push back again now. Having the families there, going to be good for decompressing. Right? Before just be going back to your room by yourself, it was always the game and only the game. But now guys like Fred VanVleet can go back and see their family and decompress and not think about the game for a couple hours and then go back. I think Fred was a little bit gun shy on the 3-point line in game 2. If you want my honest assessment, he chunked his first 3-point shot and he was really, really poor from the three-point line in game one. And I think he was gun shy. Now he made a couple down the stretch, and he played better as the game went on, as they got their momentum, as they were able to play Raptors basketball. But they lost by 3 points, and I can't help but think back to the first quarter when I saw Fred VanVleet pass up a couple prime opportunities. When I know when he's going to make those. So
Yeah.
there's something going on there mentally. I'm hoping he can get over that hurdle. But I'm not worried about the Raptors. I think they come back in game 3 and they win. I mean, being within 3 points, Marcus Smart, he made 3 3-pointers in the entire series last series. So he
And
got
then
hot.
5 in the fourth quarter yesterday. Yeah, like at least
So
5. I think he kept going on and on, didn't he?
yeah, he was. I think he was like
It was 5 for
7 for
sure.
9 or something on the night. So he was
Okay.
very hot from 3 point. But the point I make there is the fact that he went an entire series and
Yeah.
only made 3.
Hmm.
So it's hot and cold. The tap can be turned off just as quick as it was turned on. So
Let's
I
hope
don't
they can
think the
turn it
Raptors
off.
are in that much of a trouble.
Let's hope they can turn that tap off like right away, though. Honestly, because like you said, I hadn't really thought even going back to last season, going down 0-2. You write the death sentence here, and essentially you bounce back when you've got a player like Kawhi. It's a lot easier to I guess fantasize and accept when it happens and becomes a reality. But um, I mean, they weren't. I didn't think they played bad, right? They essentially had the lead the entire game. At any point, they were in a lead or tied. They really never were super behind. But then once Smart hits like I said, 5 of those threes in the fourth, and Kemba Walker continues to go clutch. Like once they took the lead, they never really gave it up. So my only concern is the Celtics kind of have that kind of cutthroat mentality, and they seem to, like a lot of other Boston teams, like know how to win when the going gets tough. They seem to clutch it out. So if the Raptors go down 0-3, obviously the death sentence is almost a guarantee. That's got to be like in the 90s to 99% chance. Right, there's not a lot of teams. I mean, coming back 3-1 is different, but you've already got the one win. Go down 0-3, there's a lot of guys packing their bags. It's just human nature. So we're pulling for the Raptors, and I think again it was such a close game in Game 2 that it could have gone either way. Especially VanVleet, you mentioned him, a little bit gun shy, but that last second 3 was close. I mean, they still had a chance to tie the game at that. So you can never consider them completely out of a series when they're down 0-2 and the second game goes like that. That was my only real takeaway. But you mentioned the Bucks, man. They got owned. They got owned in Game 1 by the Heat. Now they're accustomed to this, right? They lose Game 1 in round 1. They come back and win 4 straight against who do they play? The Orlando Magic.
That's not
So
going to happen here.
no, the Heat are looking a lot good, man. Because the Heat they put on a show. Jimmy Butler, how many points did he have in Game 1? It's astronomical. So I'm concerned for Giannis. And at this point, like the Heat Celtics is the matchup that people are going to start honing in on, especially if the Raptors can't get it together by tomorrow. So, what do you think? Any takeaways from the Bucks Heat other than what you just dropped that you don't really see anything coming back? Anybody coming back from that one?
Well, the Heat are the darling team of the Eastern Conference right now. You might want to call the Denver Nuggets the darling team of the Western Conference, depending on what OKC does tonight to Houston. But I'm not saying that Milwaukee isn't going to beat Miami in this series. What I am saying is that there is no way Milwaukee's going to win 4 straight and take the series
Right.
4-1. The Miami Heat are deadly from the 3-point line. Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero. I'm missing a key name. I can't believe I'm forgetting his name, but they're deadly from 3-point, right? So you need to be. It's kind of like the Boston Celtics in the way the Raptors are dealing with them. With the Boston Celtics, for Raptors fans who are watching, you got Marcus Smart, who's a 3-point threat. You've got Jaylen Brown, who's a 3-point threat. You've got Jason Tatum, who's a 3-point threat, and you've got Kemba Walker, who's also a 3-point threat. And then on top of that, Tice can actually shoot the 3. Not at the same clip that Serge can shoot the 3, but probably around the same clip of what Mark is shooting it. So it's the same sort of structure that the Raptors are dealing with. So it's interesting why people are pairing these two up, right? Boston versus Miami, because you want to know who has the better team, who has the better build up to win that series. But I don't know if that's the matchup you get. You might end up getting a rematch from last year's Eastern Conference Finals. Right now, that's looking less likely,
Yeah.
obviously, with the Raptors. But I'll make a hot take right here, right
Let's hear
now.
it.
If Miami goes up 2-0, Miami sweeps.
Miami sweeps. Okay, I like your confidence there. So you're thinking like the Bucks are packing their bags if they're in the Raptors situation.
I think the Bucks are a bunch of quitters.
Gotcha. Okay. What
Uh,
makes you
I
say
think
that?
I think they quit last year. I honestly like I understand when you think you have the drive and everything that it takes, but when you're one player, the Bucks are one player. Let's be honest.
Right.
Chris Middleton is good, but he's like fringe good. He's not an elite player in any sense of the word. So the Bucks are one player. They're one guy, and he's a really, 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 really good player. Defensive Player of the Year, MVP, guy who deserves all the accolades. He's earned them all, but they're one player. So if that's the case, then it's real easy to quit, because if one guy's mentality gets down, right, then the whole crew comes down. Just the same way as he builds everyone up, he can tear it all down with just having a bad mentality. Like, this team can't do it, right? So I just think that it's a much better built team, a championship built team over in Miami, and in Milwaukee, it's a flawed process. So I just it's easy to quit on a flawed process. So yeah, I'll go it on a limb, and I'll say that if Miami takes a 2-0 series lead, if we don't see a pushback from the Bucks in game 2, then I think that Miami will take a stranglehold and end up sweeping and shocking, but not shocking the world, because everyone knows that Milwaukee's a one-man team.
You got that confidence in big bully Jimmy Butler beating up on Giannis and the rest of the little kids at the playground, eh? After that, if that's what
He's a
happens,
bully. He's a mean guy, and that you need someone like that. And Giannis, he mean mugs and he screams when he does some slam
yeah,
dunks on some tiny guys. But there's a difference in Jimmy Butler mean and the mean mugging of Giannis Antetokounmpo. You just don't have it, man. You're not like I think that the Heat are I'm scared of the Heat as a Raptor. Even if the Raptors make past the Celtics, I'm scared of the Heat because they're that good of a team.
crazy because I mentioned on the last podcast, if this is the tougher series, it's already showing to be, because we don't really look at the I personally don't look at the Bucks or the Heat based on what I've seen the same way I look at the Celtics in terms of matchup. See the way the Raptors are faltering already. But a pod ago, I said, hey, this is going to be the tough series. And then you go on, if you're somehow to get past the Celtics, you're looking at the Bucks, who you just mentioned is a one-man team, or the Heat, who I really didn't have faith in. Well, you fast forward to a podcast later and we're saying, like, man, both of those teams would be a tough matchup. So it shows how much things can fluctuate, how much momentum can change, and how much your star guys can factor in the postseason, right?
Well,
Especially in the NBA.
and how much guys like even us can learn, right? Like we may have been speaking at a place of blissful ignorance
Yeah.
before, but now we've seen so much of it. It's in our faces, the highlights, the games, it's all we have to watch. Now we're just like, uh-oh, wow, this is a good team. This isn't just Jimmy Butler and a couple of guys. Look out.
The bubble factor can't be understated either. It's just one of those weird years where just in every league, well, in the two leagues, I should rephrase, the smart leagues that have decided to go with a bubble, you're asking players to do something they've never done before, at least not since they were young players. And even then, it's a totally different circumstance. So the bubble could factor in, right? A lot of our hot takes or a lot of the betting could be totally misconstrued or just out the window when you factor in something strange like that. Over in the West, man, we mentioned Denver pulled off the 3-game comeback, and you talked about Donovan Mitchell and his kind of presence and the personality, right? That's been showing through. He had the chance to win it. I can't forget. There's a buzzer beating three that he almost hits and it rims out. So if you go back and watch the highlights of that game, it's really like any old basketball game. You could zone out for the first 3 quarters and really just check in with like 10 minutes to go in the fourth, and just so back and forth with Gobert and Mitchell just dominating, and Jamal Murray. Give Denver their credit, man, because like they're they're less kind of how would you put it? Would you not say Utah has a little bit more star power for now, up until the Denver kind of guys kind of grow into their own? Would you?
They're almost carbon copies.
Okay.
Wouldn't you say with Nikola Jokic and
Oh,
Rudy
that's the name.
Gobert,
Yeah, that's the name. I was on the
right?
tip of my tongue. I was forgetting, because Jokic is a
And
huge factor
yeah,
in that team. Yeah.
and then Murray and Mitchell, right? Like, so
Yep.
it's almost like they cancel each other out, and that's what Murray was saying in his post game, is like they canceled each other out. Murray and Mitchell did in that game, and it was up to the bigs. Rudy Gobert had a huge game, and so did Nikola Jokic. And Jokic's 2-point sky hook with 27 seconds left in the game ended up proving to be the winner. It's like any any sports movie you've watched with a sad ending, right? You watch Conley go up, he dribbles the ball up, Gobert comes down with the rebound, 4 seconds to go. I was like, oh no, what's going to happen here? Conley calls for the ball, he runs up and he takes the three and it's about to drop, and then you just see Donovan Mitchell hit the ground because it rims out, and
So
you know
close.
that the Nuggets were moving on. And
The
all I
theater
can
of basketball, though, the theater of
yeah.
basketball in those moments is so wonderful because I always find myself in the shoes of Donovan Mitchell, but like kind of fantasizing the opposite result. I'm always just like, oh my God, how fucking close was like you could be celebrating like you see it all the time where there's no fans, but everybody storms the court and it's like, what a game, like what a buzzer beating finish, the three from half court, it's Dame Lillard out there. But no, it's your classic letdown. And there's been plenty of both results 50-50. That's the theater where you're just in that moment, you're like, holy. And again, that's why I say you can check out for 3/4 of basketball and really just zone in
So
on the fourth quarter.
if you check those last 4 seconds, you watch Gobert pass the ball, the whole time Mitchell's got his arms up. He's wide open on the 3-point arc. He wanted the ball.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He,
Who
he
doesn't
wanted
in
the
that
ball
moment?
so
Yeah.
bad. So I don't don't know. Not everyone on a team will get along, and I'm not seeing any I'm not putting any seeds of doubt in the Utah Jazz, but it would take. I know if I was putting myself in that situation and I'm Mitchell and I know that I have the shot that I want that shot. So I'd have to take a minute and remove the salt from my wounds, because I'd be a little salty that I didn't get to take that last second shot. But
Yeah.
Conley, he's a money ball. He's money from three as well. So really, you can't. It's not like someone went up there and chunked the shot from half court, right? It was
Oh
in and it
God.
was out.
You
Amazing
cannot be
series.
upset. If you're a
I
team
can.
player, you cannot be upset with that, because again, like look at how close it is to being the opposite result. How can
Yeah.
you guarantee you don't hit the air ball it or hit the backboard? There's no way you can be upset about that. I hear you there.
Um, I just and another example of the ignorance. I think that before the playoffs started, we talked about the series. Utah Denver was like, oh, no one cares. No one cares who's going to come out of this, because and then we're talking about the series because we're just like, wow,
Yep.
holy crap, these guys are outstanding. There was a moment at the end of the game when Jamal Murray embraced Donovan Mitchell. He picked him up off the court and he embraced him and he slapped him in the chest and he said, "You and me. It's you and me for the future." Right. So, and that is the truth. You talk about the NBA needing people to carry it into the future, needing someone beyond LeBron, and maybe Giannis isn't big enough to carry the weight of it all. But man, these young stars that are coming down the pike, East Coast, you got to pay attention to the West, man. There's a reason. There's a reason everyone says the West is the best. I know that we got some good talent out here in the East Coast, but man, they're growing it out there.
Anyway, Clippers beat the Mavericks. That was one where I thought would go a little bit deeper. I thought it might go 6 or 7, but I guess it was game 6. I thought it would go 7. I thought it would be a little bit tighter, but again, just the star power of the Clippers kind of outranks the Mavericks. Even after Doncic has the gross game, was it game 4? Game 4 or game 5? Everybody was going off after the sprained ankle comes
No, it's
off.
game 4, yeah.
Yeah. Sprained ankle comes and gets 43, just easy 43-point triple double. Caps it off with the step back 3, right? Like that's the Donovan Mitchell where you're like, oh my God, it could have ended like the Doncic game, right? Speaking of which, we keep talking about all these names: Jokic, Doncic, Dragic. Okay, can we stop? Like I'm sick and tired of this, man.
Nurkic.
It's literally the most disgusting. Like it's hockey's just as bad for it too with the Finnish names. I mean, this isn't. I'm not trying to be anti anything. It's just so difficult as a tongue twister. And somebody trying their best to just get in the reps and remember all these players. I'm getting a thing saying my internet connection's unstable. Are you good? Am I clear?
Yeah. Well, it was kind of slow
Okay.
for a minute there,
It
but
popped up and said my internet connection is unstable. It's all good. I was just doing a little aside. I can cut that if it got laggy anyway. I was just saying, imagine how like, oh, it's got to be tough for broadcasters that are doing the play-by-play. Trying to remember names. Like they're literally so close. Like Doncic, Dragic, Jokic. Like I
you
don't know.
missed Nurkic.
Yeah, Nurkic. Yeah,
From the Trailblazers,
oh
yeah,
my gosh.
Jokic, and it's just like that. Yeah, they're all. Yeah, it's the European names, right? That once again shows me like people talk about how sports is inherently racist, white people owning black people, blah blah blah. The NBA is a black sport. Well, actually, the NBA is not a black sport. Just take a look at the European players. Luka Doncic being the number one guy
Yeah,
that we talk about nowadays, and I can go to Utah. Joe Ingles, a white Australian guy, right? Like
right.
it is a universal sport. Sports are universal. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
That's the best
I
part
just
about, to me, the NBA, the MLB, and usually obviously soccer, like the MLS. But again, soccer is more of a global sport to begin with. But that's
mhm.
two of my favorite things about those two sports, the NBA and the MLB, how they're North American sports. That's where they're located, and that's where, like, it's North American pop culture. But you get like even Giannis, we talked about him before. Isn't he from Africa? Like, there's a lot of guys
Yep.
who essentially just, they come from parts of the world where you get the culture and you get the perspective. And again, maybe it goes back to what we mentioned about the NHL and not having enough guys that come from all over the world, where they're ignorant. They're really just ignorant, and they thought like a 3 second or 3 moments of silence before playing a game was enough. Whereas in the other leagues, or at least in the NBA, you had an entire like players association that wasn't going to play until at least they got their message across, right? So again, just to tie it all in, the global perspective, whether white, black, Hispanic, it doesn't even matter. Just, I love how in the NBA and the MLB you get a lot of multicultural rosters and just totally different appreciation for like the global cultures that you've got. Whereas in the NHL, it's much more copy paste, the same guy that grew up in northern Saskatchewan or southern Ontario. Like, it's the same people.
Yeah, you don't get to see a lot of diversity in hockey, and that could be because the expense that you have
Do
to
you
play the sport
remember?
of hockey.
You're so
So
right. Do you remember how we celebrated how diverse Austin Matthews was when he came into the league? Because he was half Mexican. His mother is
right.
Mexican. Listen to her accent. Look at her features. Look at he comes from a and we celebrated that so much. And how come we don't do that anymore?
Well, I mean, I think the fact that it was celebrated at all is a red flag, right? And not saying that you
No,
don't
it's a
celebrate
good. It's good.
culture.
I think it's good in my like just going linking it to the two other leagues I was saying I admire so much. Right, like when
Well,
it
no,
comes to the
no. I just
NHL.
mean it's such a rarity in
Yeah,
the NHL. That's the red flag, not the fact that we're saying, "Oh,
sure.
hey, he's Mexican, and let's celebrate that." It's the fact that it's a big deal that he's Mexican. Let's celebrate that, right? So the game needs to be more accessible, in
I'm
my
with you.
opinion.
I'm with you.
So
I think
that's where it's at.
instead of it being a red flag, though, I'm like, heck yeah, we all acknowledge that the red flag is already that when you just look at the makeup of every roster in the NHL, like, you can see the lack of diversity, right? Again, you've got guys from the European nations, but we don't have enough of those players again who have dealt with the socioeconomic hardships and social racism, all those kinds of things, right? So again, when it comes down to it, I'm like, holy smokes. When Austin Matthews first came into the league, one of the major components was, yeah, he's really good, but look at, he comes from another culture. Okay. And so it's like, oh man, not only I don't see it as a red flag, I see it as, yes, we've already acknowledged, like, we need more of those. We need to, but I'm like, whatever happened to celebrating that and kind of like acknowledging it over and over and experiencing more players that come from, again, it's too bad. Like, do you remember this Ito Oguchi? I'm going way off. But there was this kid in Japan who was like a super good hockey player. I'm not even sure if he's draft eligible yet. But hell, if I cannot wait until he's ever draft eligible and makes the NHL, because you've got the kid from Mexico-ish, with the Mexican heritage. You'd have the Japanese player that's over here in North America. Like, we really need more of that. That's all I'm trying to get down to in terms of comparing it to the two leagues I admire in the NBA and the MLB for their multiculturalism. They have it.
That's all about making the game more accessible. That's all it is. If you look at, and I'm not saying that the
Sure.
NHL doesn't host their camps and doesn't go out into the community, but they don't do it to the level that the NBA does, and they definitely don't do it to the level that the NFL does. I can't
Yeah.
speak for MLB because I don't know about MLB and their outreach, but Major League Baseball has been a world sport, or sorry, baseball has been a world sport for so long that hockey is relatively new compared to a game like baseball, right?
Yeah.
As silly as that sounds.
No, it's true.
Um, but you got to make it accessible. The cost of playing the sport of hockey is way too high. So let's reduce that. That's step one. And once you reduce the cost, then you'll see more people taking part, because it makes more sense. Hockey is actually on a decline. If we're being honest, your participation in hockey at the youth level is on a
Yeah,
decline,
we've known that for a long
and
time. Yeah.
soccer and basketball are up
Yep.
because one, they're economically easier to play because they're cheaper to play, and two, the interest level is there, the outreach is there, right? So the growth is there.
And the
The hockey needs
foundation,
to figure it out.
the cultural foundation, the interest is already there because again, we live in Canada in a multicultural, diverse society. That's when I grew up, that's all we ever boasted about Canada. It's a melting pot of cultures. A lot of those cultures that we talk about, like their heritage, like the ground roots and the interest and the foundation for soccer is already there, right? And so again, basketball and soccer, those sports are on the rise because they're cheaper and because it's not like when you come to Canada, like hockey is already such a alien sport and it's expensive. There's so many factors going back to your point about making it accessible. There's so many factors that would drive a new family to Canada or even a family that's been established in Canada away from it, where in their culture, if they're from Italy, if they're from another part of the world, like soccer is a global sport, right? So that can contribute to the growth in those sports, not just how cheap they are, but just the cultural ties. So hockey is always going to be behind. And that's maybe what ties into why you see rosters made up of a lot of guys who are white, because again, traditionally people who grow up in white North America, they understand and watch, and whether they watch or not, they know what hockey is. But you ask a family, whether they're first generation, second, third in Canada, if they haven't been tuned in or if they haven't been exposed and shown and taught hockey, if they didn't have an interest in it, a lot of times those other sports are going to continue to grow. So again, hockey needs to continue to be accessible for people so that we can grow the diversity in there, because it's almost fighting an uphill battle in the argument that I just made, right? Because like you got people where your culture is already tied into those global sports. Hockey, sometimes you just don't have room for it. Imagine having to learn cricket tomorrow and just
Yeah, no, I think I was going to say, I think I see where you're going here. The more diverse Canada gets, the less space there is for hockey, and the
yeah.
more it has to compete for the eyes, right?
And it's not even
So, yeah,
competing. It's just like your foundation in your culture. Your just interest is set in, like how old is soccer? You know what I mean? Like it's a global sport that's always been part of these global cultures. So again, it's not that hockey is in the wrong, but they're fighting an uphill battle that they need to make their sport accessible, cheaper, and less exclusive. That's all it is,
yes.
because those are the factors that kind of contribute to their overall, you know, they're in the last place in the race.
Yeah, I almost think that that's why hometown hockey was created as a sort of a start. I understand that you want to create a program for a network, and that is also true. But when you think about it, hometown hockey, when it comes to your city, and I've been there a couple times, it brings everyone together. It's an event, and
Yeah.
how many new hockey fans are you creating because it's showing you all sorts of sides of the sport. It's showing you our side, the broadcasting side with TSN that comes in, or
Hmm.
Sportsnet that comes in. It's showing you, or it gives you a concert, so there's music, and it just it's an investment in the camaraderie, in the growth of the sport. So I just need to see more of that, and just like you said, make it cheaper. So yeah,
You
um,
can tell you can tell we really want to talk hockey, but let's just wrap up basketball. Tonight at 9 o'clock, Houston, OKC, game 7. That's relevant because the Lakers beat the piss out of Portland in 5 games. It might have been different if Dame was back or if Dame was healthy, right? Because we know the injury to the finger and then the knee, that essentially spelled the end for Portland. But Lakers beat the piss out of them, and then Houston, OKC, we said from the beginning, it was tied 2-2 on our last pod. We said who's got the edge? Maybe Houston does on paper. Well, look at that. It's gone to 7 games, so it should be super exciting tonight. And again, before we get into hockey, what's your take on that series and that game 7?
Man, Russell Westbrook coming back was huge for the
Hmm.
Rockets.
Hmm.
That's one thing that's for sure. Um, Looking at how these two teams are built, you wouldn't have expected. No, 100 million%, no one expected OKC to even be in the playoffs when they made the Chris Paul move. It was a salary dump, and this guy was done, and there was nowhere left for him in the league. People were doing to him what people did to Melo, and Melo was proving some people wrong in that Portland series, let me tell you. So um, yeah, just seeing what OKC's been able to do is outstanding. Chris Paul has been turning the clock back, and he's had a little bit of extra energy, I think, for this series specifically because of who he's going up against, and because he knows the personalities on that roster. I think the Chris Paul before Houston wouldn't have been as successful against Houston
Okay.
as the Chris Paul after Houston, because Houston let Chris Paul, as I say his name so much, go free and shoot,
Who's
right? It
that?
was a shooting offense. Chris Paul,
Okay.
and Chris Paul. He's number 3 if you didn't know. But
A friend of LeBron James.
yeah, definitely a friend of LeBron James, just like Carmelo Anthony. They were all on the banana boat together, I believe.
Ooh.
Um,
Who's this again?
LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, Chris Paul.
That's
Chris
the
Paul.
guy I was looking for.
That's the
Okay.
guy. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So the way Houston structured themselves changed the way he played the game a little bit, freed him up to shoot as much as he shoots. He was always an accurate shooter, always deadly,
Okay.
but now he shoots a ton. So here's my take. I think they got enough to put Houston to bed here and move on,
Wow.
but I don't think Chris Paul can put up the style, the energy needed to take out the Lakers. They would be going up against the Lakers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it would be
So
LeBron versus his good friend
I
Chris
just think
Paul.
that there's a fire there, right? Like they
Yeah.
traded me. They didn't want me. They sold me on this idea and they said I was the problem. Well,
Right.
I'm going to show them that I'm not the problem. They're all the problem, right? But there's none of that with the Lakers, right? I understand you're still a star player and you're still going to play great, right? But that juice that you get, it's unquantifiable, Ryan. It adds to the ability to get that extra gear when you're down 10 points, be like, no, I'm not going to let them do this to me, and go put 3 3-pointers up, right? And I just don't see it happening for OKC against Los Angeles. But I really think that they got enough to put Houston away tonight.
I'm looking forward to the result there. You really convinced me. Like OKC, a team that I wouldn't have really had my chips on. Again, we said Houston had the advantage on paper. You're saying they might have the chance to win it in 7, so I'll be
Well, yeah,
dialed in.
Gallinari and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, and there's a bunch of guys. They're just playing really well, and to think, man, to think what Paul George has put up for the Clippers to what they gave up for him. I'm sorry, like that was not you have not lived up to
Value.
your value, and
No.
OKC is laughing with all the first round picks they got and the talent that they could plug in to become a playoff team right away, right away. So
Unreal.
it's unreal. I think they got enough for tonight, so it'll be interesting. I'll definitely be tuning in and watching. It'll be my late night game, and yeah, I got OKC.
Yeah, that's 9 o'clock tonight. I got an anniversary dinner with the girl tonight, so
Oh,
hopefully I get back in time. But even still, that game should be right in the nitty gritty when I sit down to get tuned in. So that'll be
well, yeah, you
perfect.
don't need to watch the first half or even the
Oh
first
no,
3 quarters, man. Just
no,
tune in for the fourth quarter.
that's basketball. That's the best part about it. The last 30 seconds, last half an hour too. So you're gonna pop the popcorn with 2 minutes to go and be done before the game's over. Let's get into hockey, man. Today's game is Dallas, Colorado, and believe it or not, Colorado is still alive. Even though Michael Hutchison, our boy, Mikey Hutch, he actually had the season on his shoulders 2 nights ago, and I think it came down to Ben Bishop coming in a little too early. He clearly wasn't ready to take the net because Colorado scores 5 in the first period. The game's over, and they live to see another day. But tonight, with Dallas leading 3-2 in Game 6, do you have a funny feeling that this series goes 7, or is this lights out for Hutchison in Colorado now?
Well, I think that if Colorado can put 5 in the net every night, that I think Hutchison will win them the game. Man, how crazy is it that we're talking about Hutchison being the starting goaltender
Oh, it's crazy.
for a team in the second round of the playoffs, getting his first career playoff win?
Yep,
Like, I
pretty
mean,
freaking crazy.
if we went back in time and told our past selves this, we would slap ourselves in the face, be like, "You're crazy. That's never going to happen. This guy's junk. He's going to end up in the AHL junk pile somewhere, never to see an NHL ice surface again." But that's not what happened, and it just goes to show, man. In the same vein as James Reimer for the Carolina Hurricanes, you don't need to have an all-star outstanding goaltender. You just have to have decent defense in front of them to and some goal scoring that's
I
actually
was gonna
clutch and
say,
puts pucks in the net. But yeah, man, Michael Hutcherson putting that getting that dub for Colorado. It's interesting. Talking about Bishop, there was an interesting story that came out that, like you said, they may have brought him in too early, and it was concussion related.
oh really?
Um, yeah, so I don't know if there's going to be um anything to come out of this from the NHL side in response to the Dallas Stars, but a report I read said that Dallas up at noon game day, he was unfit to play.
Hmm.
At 3:00 game day, he was unfit to play. But at 7:45, he was fit to play. And some people are insinuating that maybe they fudged the medical report and that they didn't actually have time to get a doctor to sign off, and they just said that one did.
This
And
happens with Ben Bishop all the time. Do you remember in
yeah,
Dallas or in Tampa Bay when they were in either the Cup final or the conference final? Shout out to Tampa Bay for making another conference final. But he was a game time decision. They said the entire like leading up to the game. This was Cooper. I specifically remember. Oh yeah, like he's injured. He's injured. He's not going to play. And then he played. And then I remember they were focusing on it in the broadcast. He'd make a save and then he was like laboring to get back into his like goalie stance. And you're going, what is with this guy? He's so mysterious, and I remember Jeff O'Neill in the past saying, like, if you're hurt, you're hurt. Get out of the net. Don't make it a factor in the game. You're a goaltender. You're a starting goaltender. Stop making it such about you and such a factor. So I wonder if that's just a Ben Bishop thing or if that just seems to follow him from team to team. But it's curious that, like, yet again, we're in the same conversation with Bishop. Game time decision. Is he hurt? Is he not? Comes back and looks like garbage. It's like, okay, this happens with you a lot or more than
well,
once.
it comes down to something we've said before on this podcast, and an athlete will always tell you they're good to go.
Yeah.
You cannot believe an athlete when they tell you you're good to go or they're good to go. And so that's where it falls back on the team. And so, yeah, maybe in Tampa, Bishop said, I'm good to go, coach. Put me in. He obviously wasn't, right? In this situation, good to go, coach. Put me in. Obviously not good to go, right? So you always have to defer to doctors. I didn't think with the clip of what Dallas was able to do to start the series, I didn't think Colorado stood a chance. But now the fact that we're going back and forth between goaltenders, and you've obviously lost a little bit of faith in Hudobin. As much as he's your only
Yeah.
choice now, you've lost a little faith because you went to Bishop. And it was a massive failure.
I don't know if that means they lost faith or if that just means when Bishop says he's good to go, then that's his in terms of like pecking order. But
Well,
even I feel like Colorado has to hope that either Bishop wants the net again or Kudobin looks like a backup goalie because otherwise, like, they're in
Well,
trouble.
that my thing. My thing is like okay, I understand that the starter deserves the net because he earned the net, but give him the net in the next series. There's a guy, he's hot, he's ready to go. He's more
Especially if he looks like that.
like I don't believe Bishop played for 15 or 16 days.
Nice.
Right? That guy's cold as ice. You're putting him in. I don't care if he's played in practice. He hasn't seen actual game time or gameplay for a long time. So Ben Bishop was not ready to go. As much as you might want him to be ready to go, and you think that he's going to be a difference maker in the game, yeah, he was a difference maker in the game, all right, just
Oh,
not for your benefit.
he made the difference in the first period, and they might as well pack their bags and got ready for 2 days later.
Like I don't know. I think Hudobin is a good enough goaltender to get you through the tough times, but in the same way that Halak is a good enough goaltender to get you through the tough
Yeah,
times.
yeah.
And
I'm still taking Hudobin
sometimes,
over. I'm still taking him over Hutchison. Sorry to cut you off. I'm still taking Hudobin over Hutchison, but
yeah.
slimmer margin than Bishop.
I was just gonna say we seen in the Boston series, right? That sometimes
Yeah,
they can get you through the hard times most of the time, but sometimes it's just not enough, right? And
yeah.
it's funny, before we move on to that series, you brought up Hutchison again, and it just clicked in my mind, man. Hutchison, Hudobin, or Halak, Elliott. How many backups have we seen start in the NHL playoffs this year?
It's a theme. It seems to happen a lot though. Think about all the years that like even a backup goalie has taken the first series. Grubauer the year that Holtby won a cup, right? Fleury and Murray, like it just constantly it's the theme.
Yeah, I don't know. It just caught my attention this year. I don't know
Oh yeah.
if it's more normal than I'm making it sound, but it just seems so out of place that we're not talking about these outstanding number one goaltenders who are stealing the
Yeah.
show.
Oh yeah.
It has the era changed then is I guess is the question I'm making. Have we moved on from a number one guy, a Marc-Andre Fleury, playing 65 or 60 games a year, 65 games a year, and then playing the entire playoffs? Have we moved to the two goalie system?
I think you're always going to have goalies who are head and shoulders above others. You're always going to have a top 5, a top 10, hell, even like a top half of the league, right? But in terms of anybody who doesn't have one of those goalies, that's got to be the new way to go. But again, what I'm thinking is it's something I think you've said on shows before, if not you, somebody similar to you that said like, hey, you ride the hot goaltender, right?
Oh yeah.
I feel like it's, again, that's the theme of the playoffs in every situation. Not to take away from the point you're making, because you're right. Yet again, you're seeing it happen in like almost every series. Like you can just pull an example out of every series. But again, it's just kind of one of those things where you have a Carey Price. I'm sorry, but the money is going to dictate something else. Like you're not going to be able to really pay him a certain amount of money. Consider him as important as your starting ace, your quarterback, and then have a guy that plays half the amount of games when you've got you know what I mean? Because there's a pecking order in terms of salary too. So that's the only thing that puts a roadblock in my mind. But again, if you don't have a Price, a Bobrovsky who's overpaid, and a couple of other guys who essentially would be in that ballpark, then I'm with you. Like the way to go, and I think maybe the way this leads into our conversation for after the playoff talk. Maybe the way Dubas is potentially thinking is maybe Freddie isn't in that top 10 anymore based on his recent performance. And it pains me to say that's actually potentially accurate. He could be more in the top 15, or there could be numbers that explain he's between 12 and 17 in the overall goalies in the league. Maybe Dubas, who loves his numbers, is going Campbell plus another Campbell equals the same, if not better, because I can ride the hot goalie and not feel like I'm hamstrung in the situation I just said, puts the roadblock in your mind. So I feel like although we've loved Freddie, we've loved everything he's done for the Leafs, if Dubas does want to put all of his chips in, I'll bring this back up later because I have an even hotter take, but if Dubas wants to put all of his chips in and move a goaltender like that, he might be able to move into your line of thinking where he can have two goalies that you can ride a hot one, but even still, those have to be two goalies that are either like fringe starters or career like goaltenders in the league. They can't be experimental backups like you've seen with Hutchinson, Sparks, you name it, right? Like Kaskasuo. They've got to be McElhaney's. They've got to be Grubauers and over, right? So
Um,
that's a
yeah,
long-winded way to put it, but I think, do you see what I'm saying? Like there's two ways to look at it. You've got a couple goalies in the league where you wouldn't be able to do that, and maybe Freddie is a reason why the Leafs wouldn't be able to do what you're saying. But if they go ahead and follow through with a lot of these rumors, they might put themselves in the category of some of these teams we can see in the third or second round that are just riding a hot goaltender and aren't hamstrung like this. Ben
lot
Bishop is an outlier because he's paid a lot.
a lot of interesting rumors out there right now regarding goaltenders. I'll speak on the Freddie Andersen stuff, and I will say that Kyle Dubas has outwardly said we are not trading Frederik Andersen unless it's an upgrade.
Okay,
So
so
I
the upgrade has
firmly
to be on defense, though.
no an upgrade in net.
Where are you going to
Like
get
he is
something
not
better than Freddie?
trading that. That's it. So that's the point. He's not trading him, right? Because you're not going out to the goaltending market and finding something better than Freddie right now, right? So in my opinion, he deserves the right to earn his future contract with the Toronto Maple Leafs. If you have the belief in Hutchison, then give him 25 games. Let Freddie rest. Give him
You're
30
talking
games.
about
Or not
Campbell.
Hutchison, sorry,
Yeah.
Campbell. My apologies.
No, but I
Names are
just
all
wanted to
screwing up in my
correct it
head.
because I knew exactly what you meant.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, if you have the belief in Campbell, then give him the 25, 30 games, whatever it is. If you want Freddie to start exactly 50-50, then do it because if you have that much faith in him. But give Freddie Andersen the chance to prove to you that he is a top 10 NHL goaltender when he is put in the right situations. Tuukka Rask played 55% of the games this year. Now, he played way less than that in the playoffs, obviously, and Boston fans will have you believe that he's done in Boston because they lost due to him abandoning the team. But the point I'm making is he had a resurgence of a season because he was able to rely on
Plays on a good
a
team,
backup, right? He was
and
on a good
goalies play
team,
on
but
a
he
good
was
team.
able to rely on a good backup, though,
Yeah.
right? He didn't have to play 75% of the games. He was fresh. He was healthy,
100%.
right? And that's what makes a big difference. You have a healthy defense, and you have a healthy tandem in goal. I don't see Frederik Andersen going anywhere. I don't see the Leafs making an upgrade in net in the offseason. I see them running it back with Soupy and with Frederik Andersen, and I hope that they re-sign Freddie. But if not, I can only salute what he's done for the Toronto Maple Leafs because he's done amazing things. We were just never able to put the team around him that he needed to be the level of goaltender apparently that the market has demanded.
Oh yeah. Well, before we move on to the rest of the playoff stuff, let's actually talk about my final take on the Freddie stuff here because I kind of led into it, but here's the thing. I'm 100% with you. I think the more ideal way to do it, and maybe in a salary cap more free world, it's starting to get more free now that Kapanen's been traded. There's a little bit more money to play with. But in less of a up against the wall, you've got a lot of money, dedicated. You know the story, 40 million on all these forwards. In a different circumstance, I think that's perfect because Freddie would have that exact chance to play out his contract, earn another one, and be the top 10 goalie that we think he is with a better decor. But I have a funny feeling, especially based on a lot of these rumors, and I'll get into this in a sec too, what the rumors are. I feel like Dubas is going to push his chips the other way because I feel like he's already hamstrung himself. I think he's realizing, okay, the 40 million is tricky to move, tricky to play with, and Freddie's value is going to go down next season. It's essentially going to go down because players or teams aren't going to want to trade for him when they have to re-sign him. But if I trade him now, going into the second last year of his deal, the value significantly goes up because teams are going, okay, he's got this year and next on his deal. It's a lot of the deals that Dubas goes for. He usually gets a muzzin where he doesn't have to re-sign him right away. He's got a year and a bit on the deal. So that's where Freddie's got more value right now. And I think what Dubas is going to do is say, okay, it's easier for me to move Freddie right now and rely on I wanted to say Hutchison too right there, Campbell, and whoever else I can muster up, because at this point they're not going to have the money based on what's being paid up front, and hopefully to bolster up the decor to re-sign Freddie in his late 30s. We talked about that on the last show. So my only solution to this, John, my only solution is if you trade Freddie Andersen, you get the equivalent of Freddie Andersen back as a defenseman. Do you see what I'm saying? Like you get a Morgan Riley defense partner. And then I don't care who Campbell plays with. Do you see what, like, if Dubas has kind of decided I'm screwed based on the money that's already allocated, and if Freddie comes up and I can't afford him, I got to move him now before next year, I can see where he might go, okay, if I trade Freddie and get Morgan Riley's defense partner back, fine. But like at this point, I'm not too sure which angle they go. In an ideal world, I like your angle better. I'd rather see Freddie stay and earn another contract with the core fixed. But I feel like Dubas might, based on the rumors that are ongoing, Freddie to Carolina for Slavin. Pesci. Or the other rumor, Freddie to Calgary for Andersen, the defenseman, and somebody else. I forget who it was. I'm realizing that Dubas might actually be considering the idea that value on Freddie's contract is higher than it'll ever be, and he might not be able to afford him again. And I'm like, wait a second, this might be the way it goes. As long as you get the return in defense for Freddie, I'm content, but there's no other way.
Well, can we agree that Toronto is an offense factory? We've talked about that before.
Oh yeah, I think Bracco was in that deal actually as well.
Okay, so
the one rumor.
Have you heard the news out of St. Louis recently? Have you been following
with the around Pietrangelo that we keep bringing up, or no?
No, more around Vladimir Tarasenko.
No.
Vladimir Tarasenko just had another shoulder surgery, another 5 to 6 months. And it is widely being rumored that he will never be the same player again. And he may be done in general.
Okay.
And that puts St. Louis in an offensive vice. Right, they really, really, really need offense over there, and they have a lot of defense over there. So I don't know whether or not they want to keep Pietrangelo and they want to trade a Colton Parayko for a William Nylander. Started a little wildfire on Twitter last week saying that with on a St. Louis podcast. But it's definitely there's definitely a little smoke over there in St. Louis, and I hear you talking about bringing a defenseman in, a more top end defenseman in for Frederik Andersen, but all that tells me is that Toronto is undervaluing Frederik Andersen, and everybody else knows the value of this goaltender and knows how rare it is to have a guy like that available.
There's a lot of teams that want and need a Freddie.
Yeah, and the teams that you're talking about, they have strong defensive cores that will play in front of him, something that Toronto doesn't have. So they know better. So I don't think you can move Freddie, in my opinion. I think anybody calling on Frederik Andersen and offering a top level defense only emboldens me as the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs to keep him, because now I know, well, obviously I have to get better defense because these teams with better defense seem to believe that my goaltender is good enough to win.
I'm just of the belief that like Freddie Andersen in a deal with a guy that was already out the door, like a Dermott or um, oh my gosh, Andreas Janssen, something like that. Like you may be able to fetch a top tier defenseman and a prospect or a pick to a team that really wants goaltending. Like I said, Carolina, although we just gave Reimer the credit he kind of deserves, they might be looking at this going, okay, Mrazek and Reimer didn't get it done. We're willing to part with whatever defenseman it is that's a defenseman and plays solid defense for Anderson. Now, I'm not saying we're overvaluing Anderson because I'm not saying that defenseman is like number 2 D man. I'm just saying a guy that can play on the right-handed side with Morgan Riley. You got like another Muzzin to play with Riley, so it's like we've already discussed it, a Muzzin Hall, a Riley blank. So again, if it comes down to it, I can see where Anderson might be on the move, but it doesn't make sense to me to part with something that we just mentioned is doesn't grow on trees and is a luxury to a lot of teams. So I'm still with you. The more ideal way to do it is to maybe continue to get out from under that third line cap and continue to address the defense core and give Anderson the opportunity to prove he's the top 10 goalie we think he is. But that's, I guess we wrapped up a Leaf talk too in the middle of the playoff talk because it kind of links to the goaltending around the league where you see a lot of tandem goaltenders, teams riding the hot goalie, getting it done. And maybe Dubas is open-minded to that idea and is also open-minded to what value is left on Anderson's contract. So I'm still with you, but there's another way to do it too. And I don't know if Dubas thinks that way.
You know what? I was going to save this till after we finish talking playoffs, but it fits so well and it
Go for
transitions
it.
so well into the words you just said, Brian. You talk about tandem goaltenders, and we've been talking about rumors and we've been talking about trades. Well, the Montreal Canadiens made a
Yes.
trade today for a goaltender, and it has a rumor attached to it. Automatically, the rumor mill started tilling up when the Montreal Canadiens traded for Jake Allen out of the aforementioned St. Louis Blues.
The Montreal Canadiens, who have Caden Primo in the pipeline, just traded for Jake Allen.
Yeah, and
Interesting. Okay.
the Montreal Canadiens, who also employ Carey Price, just traded for
Yep.
Jake Allen.
Not Chris Paul, right?
No, not Chris Paul, Carey Price. The trade was for a third round pick in 2020 and a seventh round pick in 2020. And Jake Allen was sent over with a seventh round pick in 2022. So basically, the trade was for a third round pick. So St. Louis selling low on Jake Allen.
Okay.
But the rumor that came attached, and let me walk you through 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon here. Carey Price played his junior hockey where? Tri-City Americans, Washington. Carey Price's fiance, wife, whatever, lives in Washington State.
Oh my goodness.
Where do we have a team popping up in the NHL?
Yeah. Oh,
In Seattle.
Jason
And
Statham.
could possibly the Montreal Canadiens be looking to leave Carey Price available in the expansion draft in hopes that the new Seattle team brings a name a la Marc-Andre Fleury over to not only sell the team, but he would be comfortable coming over because he basically lives there in the offseason.
You really know how to put a hot take out there. Like you really, that's one of your biggest skills. You know what I mean? Because like I'm listening to you and I'm like, I get it. But like, come on, you're just gonna try to anger Montreal Canadiens fans on this podcast, right? I get and it's funny because it's followed up with what was the St. Louis Blues trade, Freddie Andersen. I'm like, yeah, you are good at this. You just throw out a great fantasy take, and it's, oh man, I don't know what to say on it. I don't know whether I agree or disagree, but that's your role here on the pod. Not only are you an expert at just things, but dude, you just throw hot takes. Carey Price to the Seattle expansion Kraken. Let's get it started. 2020.
Honestly, I can't take credit for the rumor. I read it on Twitter, but man, is that not the spiciest of
That's
takes?
crazy.
Like,
That's so spicy. I just burnt my
I
tongue.
could see it happening when you go through the degrees of how Carey Price's career has kind of centered around that area, right? So he's already got a presence there. He's already got a presence. So and he would be willing to go. And you said about Bobrovsky, some people think Carey Price might be overpaid.
Well, again, it just depends on your school of thought. If there's a lot of guys thinking I don't need to overpay a goalie, we also are in a sport where we treat a starting goaltender the same way we treat a starting quarterback and an ace pitcher. I've said it again. If we're going to sit here and say we don't need to overpay goalies, And then we're also going to say there's a school of thought where you actually really do see it in every league. Look at there's some teams that don't have a starting quarterback, so they use a tandem. There's some teams that don't have an ace pitcher, so they use a rotation of 3 to 4 really good guys, but you'd never consider them a starter. So I guess it is just a parallel in all leagues, but it's kind of hard to say you're overpaying a guy that's also like Canada's goaltender, right? So it's much as you can definitely say Bobrovsky's overpaid. The guy literally did nothing for an entire $10 million season. But Carey Price has the pedigree, right? You've mentioned that over and over and over. So I don't know, man. It just keeps coming back to that conversation about the unwritten rules of sports and sports business. Like you get paid a certain amount based on your value, and sometimes it's not even what you've done for me lately, but it's just your name. I could see Carey Price, like Fleury, being a face of the franchise in Seattle, but oh man, we're just angering Habs fans by offering that up on the table. So
Another
just an
spicy
aside too.
rumor.
Oh,
I was
go
going to
ahead.
say another spicy rumor out of Montreal. And I don't want to get into any more rumors after this because
Oh no,
this is just. Well, I mean, I guess we could if you want, but I figured we want to talk a little bit
that
about the
doesn't sound
playoff
like
games
you.
that have happened. But another spicy rumor that has hit the mill, and one that I've talked about previously on the show before in a fantasy world. Little flashback, number 28 in blue and white. Maybe Max Domi on the move for Alex
I keep
Kerfoot.
I keep not even thinking of a trade. Domi's an RFA, right? So I'm not
Well,
sure.
Montreal's going to be looking to move him.
Yeah,
So
it's funny because his first season in Montreal was great, but his second season this year was really atrocious. And I think it was all a bit. Do you remember Max and Ty coming out on Twitter wearing Habs jerseys and Ty Domi saying, "Oh, I've always been a Habs fan," and I think that was all an absolute bullshit bit. And I think I saw right through that from day one. And I think
yeah,
right now, this is the result of it. You're seeing Max Domi 2 seasons in going, now I want to piss off Habs fans. I never belonged here in the first place. I belong just over here, just west, in Toronto, where my dad made his hay, where I really should have been drafted. It's hilarious, but I keep thinking of that whenever they talk about Max Domi being an RFA and Montreal wanting to move him. I don't know. That would be an upgrade, Domi for Kerfoot, but I would rather Domi in my top 6, and I think we don't have room for him in this top 6 unless you're talking Mikheyev isn't a top 6 player. You don't re-sign him. Do you have the money to fit Domi in your top 6 when you're trying to address your defense core? These are all questions that I can't even answer, but I do love saying Domi doesn't belong in Montreal and his heart is in Toronto, where his dad made his hay. His dad was my favorite player growing up, so seeing Domi in any other jersey but Toronto just feels silly. I've accepted it, but when he was in Montreal, it just doesn't look right. It doesn't look right.
no, and it would definitely feel like a homecoming, even though he never played for the Leafs. It would feel like you're finally bringing someone back into the fold, right? It's interesting. You talk about money and you talk about all the scenarios that we have to get through. And Max Domi's looking for $6 million, and the last thing the Leafs need is another $6 million player. But maybe and the reason why the Kerfoot trade would make a little bit of sense for Montreal is they're looking for more of a traditional center, and Max Domi is going to be playing on the wing for them. I don't know if there's a world where we see him playing for the Leafs, where we see number 28 trolling around on that third line, but
It's
I
causing
can
shit.
tell you this. I can tell you this. I would totally give him the center, third line center spot in Toronto, because he's got that sort of level of grit and stick-to-itiveness when invested that Toronto
If
needs.
he's asking for $6 million, though, that's the problem.
It's too
Because
much.
a third line center, the max I'm willing to pay him is probably 4. Like Kerfoot's skirting it at 3.5, right?
And he
Honestly.
doesn't see himself as a bottom 6 forward. That's the problem. Not yet, but I mean, I think eventually Max Domi will eventually come down to earth and realize.
Yeah,
I mean, there's only so long that you can go on your potential. Eventually, your past dictates your future.
I agree. Okay, have we figured out all the Leafs talk here? We did just bust that open
Done.
right in the middle of the playoff talk, but it made sense because the conversation about tandem goaltender leads into Freddie. The trade rumors about Freddie lead into what the overall kind of conversation in Toronto is. And now we're just sitting here wondering what's going to happen in the offseason. So we'll shelve that for another time. But the 2 series we haven't really discussed yet. One makes me sick to my stomach. It's the Islanders' love for scoring late, pushing games into OT. JG Pageau, shout out to the similar last name though. In
Best
NHL,
trade, by the way.
oh,
I mean,
gross. In NHL 20, there you always have to pick your play-by-play name. And there's nothing close to Pigeau until the day JG Pageau comes into the league. Oh God, that play-by-play name, I've used that for years. I love it. So thank you very much, JG Pageau. I appreciate
There's
you.
no lodge in the play-by-play names, by
I'm
the way.
sorry, John.
Like
There's
I
got to
mean,
be so many Johns or Johnnies and stuff, though.
I get it. I understand, but that's so generic.
Anyway, JG Pageau saved the day for me because I always like to set mine to Pageau, and it's so close. But their love for scoring late just gives me a sick feeling in my stomach. I had Philly all week long, winning this series. Is this series been a week yet? Maybe a week and a half. But since day one, I've had Philly taking it. And I think now the Islanders are going to win it in 7. But I say 7 because I think Game 6 belongs to Philly. Here's why. The health of Barzal and the health of Couturier are both up for debate, and I haven't heard any reports yet, so this could be irrelevant by the time the pod comes out. But I think if there were a trade-off, like Philly still has a decent amount of offense, and they've got to get scoring from Giroux again. He hadn't had a goal in like 2 straight playoff seasons and finally has one now. But if the Islanders lose Barzal, a team that already has struggled scoring, I have a funny feeling that maybe the Islanders lose Game 6, let Philly tie it up, but by Game 7, the Islanders are going to smarten up. They're just such a tough team, a hard-nosed team to play against. And I envision in my head, John, a final now, even though I'm so biased against this team, the way they treated John Tavares. I picture the Islanders and the Vegas and the Golden Knights as such a hard matchup in the Stanley Cup final. I'm kind of rooting for that one at this point.
Is there a team in the East that matches up better against Vegas than
No.
the
Of
New
the
York
remaining
Islanders?
teams, of the remaining teams,
Yeah.
no. I thought about it earlier. Tampa would get steamrolled. Honestly, they might be a bit quicker, but they'd get steamrolled. And Philadelphia, I don't think they have the wherewithal to hand, even though they're a tougher team. But the Islanders, they smother you, they choke you. You know what I mean? And I also think if the Islanders get to the Cup final, that is their only competition. In
Yeah,
all
and
honesty.
it's really strange to see, and it kind of sucks because the guy that built that team, Lou Lamoriello, he had the reins in Toronto, and it was said that he needed to move on, and apparently, that wasn't the case because now he's proven they're a hard, aggressive team who dumps in chases. They
Yep.
don't overpay their players, and they don't have a high or a goalie earning a lot of money. Now, Frederik Andersen's salary is not a question here right now. He's making one
Not yet,
of the
no.
best deals, but they are everything that the Toronto Maple Leafs aren't, right? And
Yep.
it goes to show you that the philosophy was obviously not wrong when Lamoriello was here. He just didn't have enough time or didn't have enough pieces to put in place. It's going to make me sick to my stomach to see them raise the Stanley Cup, but I don't see anyone else standing a chance against Vegas. And honestly, I don't know if Vegas can outscore the Islanders'
I
gritty
know.
dump and chase, slow down the game style a way of playing. It's almost like a hybrid New York or a hybrid style the way the New Jersey Rangers played. Or Rangers, New Jersey Devils. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
no, I know what you meant. I know what you meant. I was giving you a second too. I figured you might figure that out. But the issue for me is like third line Alex Tuck, the way he's scoring, it's still nothing compared to first line Matt Barzal. The way Barzal just can, if he's healthy for a final between the Islanders and the Vegas Golden Knights, like I'm trying to think of the matchups and the elite players, and I think Barzal would be the most elite of that entire of those entire two teams. But again, you go over to Vegas and you've got just the size and grit of Pacioretty and Stone, and it just goes on and on how tough and hard that team plays. So that's why I'm kind of hoping, just in terms of my old school hockey brain, I really want to see Islanders, Vegas, and this Vegas team that I've been honestly they've been my second team for the four straight years they've been in the league. They've been successful and hungry. I'd like to see them raise a cup over the Islanders that I really can't stand. But that combination of those two teams, oh man, like, because the Islanders are trying to play their defensive game, and Vegas would just be like, fine, let's keep it 0-0 until fourth overtime. Like, I don't know. It's just one of those types of matchups I think I'd really enjoy. But you can't leave Tampa Bay out because they might have Stamkos returning to the Lightning for the playoffs. So there's a bit of an edge that they'd have if Kucherov isn't actually injured, which that's still a question mark based on the way he was handled in Game 5 there. He took the high stick or whatever it ended up being that caused him so much harm because he was cut, but I think it was more concussion or head. But he didn't return in that game, and there still isn't much of a revelation on his injury there. So again, if Tampa has
Took a
Stamkos and
piece of
Kucherov,
rebar to the face from Zdeno Chara. So
it didn't make a lot of sense how he even stayed. Like if he was awake, like You know, I thought that should knock somebody out.
Oh
But
my
imagine
God.
Tampa's got those two. You can see them giving the Islanders a run for their money because you can't count out how tough Tampa plays. Like they handled Boston in 5 games. So we're almost forgetting the ability, the dynamic ability that Tampa has acquired over their years and years of hardships. But let me point something else that I had as an epiphany. The Tampa Bay Lightning's window, it's not necessarily closing, but like they're gonna have to almost make a move on Stamkos eventually. They've got these great contracts with Point, Hedman, Vasilevsky. It goes on, and they just can't seem to get it done. And I think I'm okay with that because I wonder if that's a price that you pay. You have all these great contracts, and you're a perennial good team. But what makes you think because of your state tax you can get away with that over and over and over? I feel like part of me is a sadist that doesn't think Tampa Bay deserves to win, and I'm fine seeing them maybe lose to the Islanders in the final. They're the only team that's even advanced to a conference final, and I'm shit talking them. But I just kind of look at them and go, what makes you think because you got away with all those contracts that success is just going to come to you? I feel like they just perennial, like a San Jose of the East, where they just will not win.
Yeah, it's interesting. So you brought up Stamkos and you brought up Kucherov and how good they could be, and all I can think about is and you said a great contract. Braden Point, this is a guy. Do we remember? He's coming off of hip surgery.
Yeah, he almost
Have
didn't
you
start the
seen
season
his
on time.
entries? Have you seen his entries into the zone?
Pretty
How
good.
the way he swivels around, the way he moves. He does not look like a man who had hip surgery. Like
He
that
had
is,
he had a hip upgrade. He
yeah,
got a
yeah.
he got a surgical upgrade.
Bionic. He's bionic from the hip down now. What they did is they just replaced his legs with he's like a cyborg.
Yeah,
Anyway, yeah, you definitely cannot count out the Tampa Bay Lightning. But I mean, speaking about Steven Stamkos, and you talked about potentially moving him. Is that not a bullet dodged when you think of the other teams who could have signed him? Does Tampa Bay not maybe regret that contract a little bit, Ryan?
I don't know. I
Like
feel
he's been
bad for
so good. Don't
Stamkos.
get me wrong. He's been
I feel
so
bad for the
good when
guy.
he's there,
He's
but
missed out
he's
on
just
all that
yeah.
success, and maybe that's the curse. I'm not actually. Maybe I'm more of a. Not. I'm a sadist towards the team overall. But if Stamkos ever gets healthy, that's who I want to experience the success. So maybe this is the year if he returns for the Lightning and they put it all together. Like I don't want him to miss out on a cup when he's been such a part of that team for since they were awful. Like the reason they drafted him is because they were god awful. They won a cup in '04. '04?
Oh, four, I
Yeah,
believe. Might be
and between '04 and drafting Stamkos, they were really awful. Ask Sheldon Keefe; he played on one of those teams. But in the end, I really don't want, because of all the success he's actually missed out on with that team. I don't really want to see them do well without him either. So maybe that's kind of part of my internal bias with that team. But just think, a team that gets that lucky over and over and over with contracts, good on you for not winning. Like you won at the contract, on July 1 each year. You don't get to win a Stanley Cup. You win already. You win the
just a
President's
little
Trophy and
salty.
you win signing. Yeah.
Just a little salty. We talked about the Tampa Bay moving on. I mean, we can talk about someone else possibly moving on. Zdeno Chara not giving anybody an answer to the question that has been asked year after year, but never more seriously than this year after seeing his impact throughout the year kind of dwindle and then seeing how much this maybe took out of him. Is this the last we see number 33 trolling around the blue line in the NHL?
I'm I want to say yes, but he's done it year over year where he just keeps signing these short contracts and proving that he's bionic himself. I just wonder, like, he's really big and really heavy, not overweight, but just like just physics wise. Those knees can't last forever, so I don't know if he's gonna be like, you can't fool us. You're not playing until you're 50, but he's 43 and he's still playing. So like, I think I've said everything everybody else is thinking. Like, I don't know. If he returns, it's got to be with Boston. I can't picture him in any other jersey, and that's been brought up too. Does he sign with another team? No. Our buddy Hayes said in 3 years he walks right into the Hall of Fame. That's a given.
Oh
So
yeah.
he doesn't have anything to lose. He's won a Stanley Cup. The only thing, if I'm Charlie McAvoy though, I don't know if I play another game in the NHL if Chara doesn't play, because there are so many guys lined up at my door. You saw Seti Paquette not care what he not give a single thought about his body, and get away with it too. So the thing is, again, talking about Hayes, he's brought this up. Charlie McAvoy's 6 feet tall and plays like he's 7'5", right? He plays like he's bigger than Chara. So I'm even more concerned about Charlie McAvoy than I am about the future of the Bruins, because I think this kid's going to get filled in night after night. The way he's made enemy, he thinks he's so good, so tough. He might be one of the greatest defensemen in the league, but he reminds me a bit of a Matt Tkachuk, where he's getting himself into deep water and he's going to learn a real quick lesson. Look at how Svechnikov went after him and got manhandled by Chara, and then conveniently got taken out the next game.
They'll just go after Buddy from Colorado. We've talked about before. That's what Boston will do to protect him.
They might, but are you with me? Like, they might have to protect Charlie McAvoy from here on out.
They're going to have to.
He done himself some. He plays with a maxed out credit card, and Zdeno Chara is the only thing stopping collectors from coming.
Yeah, Zdeno Chara stopped a lot of people from doing a lot of things. It
was Marchand for a while, was it not?
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, that was it. He was protecting Marchand for years, right? And you may go out there and be able to get Marchand maybe when Zdeno isn't on the ice or just came off the ice, but you damn sure know that the next time he sees you, he's going to make you answer for whatever you did, right? So that could be going away, and I just don't see. That's kind of Boston's identity, right? So I don't see them living without that. I think
that's the tax you play with, though.
Right?
That's the tax you play with. I wanted to say this. If any Bruins fans don't like that McAvoy doesn't even draw a penalty on that play, just ask yourself how many times Boston's gotten away with stuff, right? And just remind yourself that you pay a bit of a tax. That's just the way the game goes. If you want to have Zdeno Chara patrol the blue line for 15 years or 10 years, however long it was, and get away with absolutely everything he did, and then have McAvoy trying to walk in his footsteps, like, look at what Svechnikov did. He didn't even care he saw numbers, and he ran McAvoy from behind. You got guys who are willing to take a 5-game suspension to teach this guy a lesson. It's not a conversation. So I'm a little concerned for the future of McAvoy. Like, think about how little that guy's going to start playing. He'll look like Torrey Krug out there, who's another guy who plays about 1.5 feet taller than he is. So, again, the Bruins' success, I don't think it can be understated, the amount of how their toughness has lied on the shoulders of Zdeno Chara. Because I can't picture that team without him. And that's where I say I can't picture him signing again in the league on another team. But it's still out there in the open. He said he's open-minded, right? So as long as McAvoy pays him enough, he might come back.
Speaking of 5 in a game, I know that you didn't like the Richie hit. I want to talk about it. You turn your back. You turn your back. You're gonna get hit from behind, man. I didn't mind it so much. It was a legal hit, and he got penalized for it, and he deserved 5 minutes. But what I liked about it is the fact that the refs didn't kick him out of the game, because I didn't think it was worth being kicked out of the game. It was an illegal hit, and it was worth a major, but it definitely wasn't worth a suspension or being kicked out of the game. So that's where I stand on the Nick Ritchie hit. I know that you got some thoughts on it, but that's where I stand on it.
Yeah, again, the guy was so far from the boards. He followed through. It was late. It was a late hit, so obviously, it's going to be interference. But the guy's positioning, the fact that he saw numbers, kind of similar to the Kotkaniemi hit, where you're like, okay, you see numbers, but then you think, well, the guy turned. Kotkaniemi's was essentially like, the guy had the puck still, so you couldn't call interference. It was like blatant hit from behind. The guy's injured. There's blood. You had to kick him out of the game. So that's why I compare the two. But with the Ritchie hit, the guy did he not get up after? He got up. It was.
He skated off.
Yeah.
But it was definitely a shoulder issue.
But it wasn't. Was he kicked out? Was Ritchie kicked out?
No, Ritchie was not kicked out.
So that was my issue, is that he should have been kicked out. I just had to be kind of walk through that again, because when there's an injury on a 5-minute, you're kicked out of the game. It's 5 in a game. That's an injury. That's why I was saying it's similar to the Kotkaniemi hit. And now that I'm back in my mind for this take, because Kotkaniemi got a game for that. And again, guy turns his back, check finished. The only thing different in this one is it's interference as well, because he hits him like a second and a half, 2 seconds late. And in this game, in this day and age, that is considered late. Ask Charlie McAvoy how he feels about the Zach Hyman 2 years ago.
Did he hit him in the back? I thought he hit him in the side.
Well,
behind.
We'll have to look at it again then if we disagree.
But I thought it was more from the side.
Even still, then it's a late. It's 5 minutes for interference, and it's an injury on a play, right? So again, if it's like the hit that Kotkaniemi made, which to me I don't see a ton of difference, then he should have been kicked out too. But other than that, we'd have to go back over the replay if we wanted to really debate it, because we don't have it right here in front of us, and It was a few days ago, right? It was actually a couple of games ago. So we won't try to set each other up for that. We'll just end up
No,
there.
100%. No, I'm not trying to set anyone up. I was just like,
Yeah, yeah.
from my vantage point, when I watched it live, illegal hit, yes, but I didn't deem it as from behind. He may have skated up, but I deemed he came in sideways, and thus making the shoulder
Right.
impact the boards poorly, which caused the shoulder injury.
But
Right.
hear me out.
Immediately when I seen it, Ryan, I thought he separated his shoulder.
Yeah, no doubt. Hear me out too. What I'm saying, if it was from behind, it was because the player turned, right? Even
Mhm.
like when Nick Ritchie's throwing the hit, he's throwing what to me is a late, dangerous hit in the wrong spot near the boards. The fact that it's from behind would be the fourth factor, but that's more to the blame on the player. But even still, those first three things are enough for me to be like, dude, like you're out of the game, dude. You ran the guy and injured him, and it was late. Like it's one of those like, how different is that from many other plays where a guy gets completely blown up nowhere near the puck and it's 5 in a game, right? So anyway, let's get into the Vegas stuff. I don't think I'll have time to get into baseball today, John. We've gone like 2 hours almost already. We're getting
Yeah, I
close.
noticed that. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Crazy.
let's finish up tie and tight bow on the Vegas Vancouver series, because last night Vegas loses a close one against Vancouver. Thatcher Demko gets his first career playoff win, and was that his playoff debut? I think so.
Yes, it was.
There
Yes.
you go. So he's 1 for 1. Attaboy. And Vegas now leads 3-2 as opposed to 3-1. I still believe, in my opinion, Vegas has the edge, especially because Game 5, the one we just watched, was very tight. It was a 2-1 finish. Could have gone either way. But the magic, and you can correct me if you think I'm way off base, the magic that Vancouver has, don't let them force a Game 7. They just have that, like, they're not the Leafs. Like, they got a little more grit and that same level of skill, maybe a little more with Pedersen and Quinn Hughes, like rookie of the year potential, right? Like, they've got a little extra magic, and I don't think all young teams do. So if that series goes 7, I might quickly shift my bias over to, to Vancouver as a favorite to win. Up until then, Vegas still has this game. Like, they still have Game 6. It's in the bag. It's theirs to lose. Tell me what you think about that one though, because it's been a nice ride for Vancouver. Good Canadian team. I just don't think the drought is ending anytime soon. Vegas is too strong.
So, I think we can agree that the Vancouver Canucks cannot outscore the Vegas Golden Knights. As much as, yes, they won 2-1, which technically meant they outscored them for that game. Overall in all, they cannot outscore the Vegas Golden Knights.
Right.
So, what adds confidence to Vancouver is if we can keep them within 2, then we can win,
Yeah.
right? And it's the defense and it's the goaltending. But the defeatist mentality might start to creep in if you say you get down 3, right? That's when you know, oh, here comes Vegas. They're going, they're scoring, they're hot. And not only does the defeatist mentality come in, but Vegas starts feeling invincible at that point, right? You have to make,
Yeah.
as corny as it is, you got to get a chink in their armor.
Yep. You do.
Right, you got to get
It's
a
similar
chink
to
in
the
that
Islanders. Like,
knightly armor, right? That knightly armor. Once you get underneath it, start prying pieces loose,
that went
and
over my
then
head.
and then
That
and then
literally went over
yeah,
my head. I'm
I
admitting
was
it.
I was gonna say I knew it went over your head. It's like you got to get through the armor and get to the heart of the matter, because once you start making them think about clutching the stick a little bit tighter, right, and forcing the play a little bit more, that's when you can affect change in the series, right, as the Vancouver Canucks. But if Vegas ever gets that mentality, that undefeatable, that unstoppable mentality, then I just don't see Vancouver having enough to beat them. So it really is a psychological game, and it depends on who's got the clearer head come game time.
Yeah, my money's still on Vegas. There's something about that team. I just keep saying, it's too bad I didn't grow up in Vegas and I didn't have a team, because I almost feel bad cheering for them as much as I do. They're like they're like the Leafs to me at times. I look at them and I'm like, if these guys don't win a cup, I'll be disappointed. Like, they just play so inspired. And it's weird looking at a team and not liking their coach and still enjoying the gameplay. And I'm like, that's just like a Leaf fan does. Like, because we hated Babcock for so long, right? We're just like, this guy's a loser. This guy's a loser. And again, when it goes to Vegas fans, not many people like DeBoer. I still don't think it's become like, I don't think he's really got himself in the fold. I don't really like, look at the way we talked about it last pod, the way Fleury's agent was kind of playing to that market and putting DeBoer's name on that sword. Wouldn't have done it if it was Gallant. We both agreed on that. So I just think Vegas is one of those teams. They're in my heart a biased team, and it almost pains me. I talk to a lot of people who obviously were in Canada, and everyone's on the Vancouver train. and I go, okay, like I would be in any other circumstance except they're playing Vegas right now, and I love Vegas. So it's the way it works. As another aside, it's crazy trying to like Vancouver when all I can think of is the Sedins and Alex Burrows on the first line, like that old Vancouver, that such hateable Vancouver team that like literally nobody liked, and then their fan base rioted when they lost. It was like that Vancouver team was almost the big bad bullies of that generation. And now you got Kevin Bieksa, such a well put together broadcaster on sports on hockey night. You're just like, man, the world comes full circle. So yeah,
I love
Vancouver's
seeing. I said I love seeing Kevin BX on Hockey
dude,
Night.
he's
Love
the
it. Love it.
best. He breaks things down like a player, and that's why they're
Yeah.
those shows sought after. Not all players are great to listen to, but when you have the combination of charisma, he's on a good podcast with Ryan Kessler. It's the Kess and Juice Pod, if you ever have time to listen to that. But the charisma that he's got, plus the hockey knowledge and the recent hockey knowledge, like he ain't no Mike Milbury. He's somebody who we trust and we enjoy listening to. So again, in any other year, the full circle that Vegas has made, Vancouver's made, I'd be on their train because they are really likable as opposed to what they used to be. But yeah, man, Vegas is my team right now. I'm riding them all the way to a cup final, and I'm sticking with my guns. Them versus the Islanders. Vegas in 6. It ain't going 7 because you never get the ideal, 7 unless you're St. Louis, Boston. But Vegas in 6, baby, over the Islanders. We'll have to keep up on that.
Yeah. I was just gonna comment. A great way for DeBoer to endear himself to the fan base is to engrave his name into that Stanley Cup, right? So
You know what he's good at? Taking teams to cup finals.
yeah,
That's his
so
thing.
and it's not like Vegas is unfamiliar with the territory, right? So
I
they were
believe in
there
his
not too long
first year
ago.
with the Devils. We could correct ourselves next pod. We gotta get out of here real soon. I'm pushing it.
Yep.
I believe his first year with the Devils, that was the LA Kings versus the New Jersey Devils. The Kings won that cup. That might have been their very first cup.
So he's good at losing the cup too. So
Well, here's the thing. Then he goes to San Jose when McClellan gets fired, right? San Jose loses the cup to Pittsburgh. I'm not joking. I think those are both DeBoer first years. And now in his first year with Vegas, he very well could take them to a cup final. And I'm thinking third time's a charm. He beats the Islanders in 6. Again, it goes right back to what I'm saying, buddy.
you know who else's third time a charm
Who?
or third time a charm worked for? Marian Hossa.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, there you go. I'll let we can get out of here because you have a important dinner to get to and get ready
Absolutely.
for. So.
Yeah, man. And I'll be free tomorrow. Let's do a baseball pod tomorrow. Are you free for that?
Oh,
Because
yes,
we got
sure.
lots to talk about. The NBA or MLB trade deadline and the way the Jays are playing. Vladdy's stroking it. So, yeah, there's way too much to talk about to leave it here. I got to take a break for now.
Yes.
All right,
All
man.
right, buddy.
Take care.
Have a good night, eh?
Yeah, you too. Thanks. Bye-bye.